We have all heard the stories, and perhaps you even know someone who fits the description. There is the anecdotal uncle or the famous celebrity who lived well into their 90s, or perhaps even hit 100, despite breaking every rule in the modern wellness handbook. They may have enjoyed a daily glass of whiskey, avoided the gym like the plague, or indulged in rich, fatty foods their entire lives. Meanwhile, we see dedicated health enthusiasts, people who track every calorie, run marathons, and obsess over organic kale, succumb to chronic illness in their 50s or 60s. This is the longevity paradox. It contradicts everything we are told about health, and frankly, it can be frustrating. It leads many to ask a dangerous question. If you live to be 100 while smoking, why am I trying so hard? But when we peel back the layers of anecdote and look strictly at the science of gerontology and biostatistics, a different picture emerges. It turns out that living to 100 isn't just about avoiding bad things, it is about the presence of specific biological resilience factors. These superagers often possess unique biological mechanisms that allow them to repair cellular damage faster than it occurs. They are not necessarily healthy because they ignore the rules. They are resilient enough to survive despite them. However, the most exciting news from recent longevity research is that this resilience is not entirely out of our hands. While we cannot change the DNA we were born with, we can manipulate how that DNA is expressed. Today, we are going to deconstruct the longevity paradox. We will move past the myths and look at the 7 specific scientific factors, or signs, that differentiate those who age rapidly from those who stay youthful for decades. We will explore how genetics, environment, and distinct psychological traits combine to create a long life, and how you can apply these principles practically, even if you weren't born with perfect genes. This is not about finding a miracle cure. It is about understanding the biology of survival. Factor 1. Genetic fortitude and the Methuselah genes. To understand why some people survive despite unhealthy habits, we must first address the elephant in the room: genetics. It is estimated that for the average person, genetics account for about 20 to 30% of lifespan potential, with lifestyle dictating the rest. However, as we approach the age of 95 or 100, the genetic influence skyrockets. Centenarians often carry protective variants of genes, sometimes referred to loosely as Methuselah genes, that offer a shield against age-related diseases. One of the most studied is the FOXO3 gene. This gene acts as a supervisor for cellular maintenance. It regulates stress resistance, metabolism, and cell cycle arrest. Individuals with a specific variation of the FOXO3 gene have been found to have a significantly higher chance of living to 100, regardless of their diet or exercise habits. This gene essentially helps their bodies take out the cellular trash more efficiently. When a person without this variant smokes or eats poorly, the cellular damage accumulates, leading to cancer or heart disease. When a person with this variant does the same, their robust repair mechanisms may fix the DNA breaks and clear the oxidative stress before it becomes fatal. Another critical genetic component involves the cholesterol ester transfer protein, or CETP gene. Mutations in this gene can result in larger, more efficient cholesterol particles, which dramatically lowers the risk of heart disease and strokes, even in people who do not follow a heart-healthy diet. This explains why some centenarians can eat high-fat diets without suffering the cardiovascular consequences that would cripple others. Now, the practical application here is vital. You might be thinking, if I don't have these genes, I'm doomed. That is incorrect. While you cannot change your sequence of DNA, you can influence the pathways these genes control. We call this epigenetics. We can stimulate the FOXO3 pathway, for example, through specific lifestyle stressors like intermittent fasting or heat exposure, which we will discuss later. The lesson of the genetic paradox is not that lifestyle doesn't matter. It is that those without the supergenes must be more diligent with their lifestyle to achieve the same cellular repair that centenarians get for free. Factor 2. The Rosetto effect and social immunity. The second factor in the longevity paradox moves us from biology to sociology, yet it has a profound biological impact. In the 1960s, researchers discovered a town in Pennsylvania called Rosetto. The inhabitants were Italian immigrants who smoked unfiltered cigars, drank wine freely, cooked with lard, and worked in toxic slate quarries. By all standard medical metrics, they should have been dying of heart attacks in droves. Yet their heart attack rate was half the national average, and they had almost no peptic ulcers. After ruling out genetics, water quality, and diet, researchers found the answer in the community structure. The Rosetans lived in multi-generational homes. They stopped to chat with neighbors on the street. They cooked for one another. No one was isolated, and no one was left to face life's struggles alone. This phenomenon became known as the Rosetto effect. The science behind this is grounded in the neurobiology of stress. Loneliness and social isolation are perceived by the human brain as a threat to survival. This triggers a chronic, low-grade fight-or-flight response, elevating cortisol levels and increasing systemic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is the driver of almost every age-related disease, from Alzheimer's to atherosclerosis. Conversely, positive social interaction releases oxytocin and dopamine, neurotransmitters that effectively dampen the stress response and lower blood pressure. For the unhealthy centenarian, who spends every afternoon laughing with friends at a local club, that social connection may be acting as a powerful anti-inflammatory drug that counteracts the damage of their bad habits. For us, the practical takeaway is clear. In the United States, we often prioritize diet and exercise above all else, often at the expense of our social lives. We might skip a dinner with friends because the food isn't clean, or isolate ourselves to work longer hours. The longevity paradox suggests that strong, supportive relationships are not just a luxury, they are a physiological necessity. Prioritizing vitamin S social connection is as vital as vitamin D. Factor 3. Psychological resilience and conscientiousness. When we study the personality traits of those who live long lives, two distinct patterns emerge that seem contradictory but work in tandem: low neuroticism and high conscientiousness. This is the third factor. Low neuroticism essentially means emotional stability. Many centenarians possess a unique ability to shed stress. They do not dwell on problems. If a crisis occurs, they handle it and move on. They do not ruminate. Rumination keeps the body in a state of high alert long after the threat is past. If you are constantly worrying about your health, your finances, or the future, you are bathing your cells in a corrosive chemical soup of stress hormones. The happy-go-lucky chain smoker might outlive the anxious health nut simply because their stress burden is lower. However, the paradox deepens with the trait of conscientiousness. The Terman Life Cycle Study, one of the longest longitudinal studies in history, found that the single best predictor of longevity was conscientiousness, the quality of being prudent, persistent, and well-organized. Conscientious people tend to have better careers, more stable marriages, and, crucially, they follow medical advice when it matters. So how do we reconcile the carefree centenarian with the conscientious survivor? It comes down to adaptive resilience. The longest-lived people are often conscientious about what gives them purpose, their work, their family, but have low neuroticism regarding things they cannot control. They care deeply about living, but they don't worry about dying. To apply this, we must cultivate a mindset of stoic optimism. This means doing the work required to be healthy, that is, the conscientiousness, but letting go of the anxiety regarding the outcome, that is, the low neuroticism. Reducing the psychological weight of life preserves the telomeres, the protective caps at the end of our chromosomes, which are directly shortened by chronic psychological stress. Factor 4. Hormesis and the concept of anti-fragility. The fourth factor explains why a life of comfort often leads to early death, while a life of moderate struggle can extend it. This is the biological concept of hormesis. Hormesis is a phenomenon where a low dose of a stressor stimulates a beneficial adaptive response. Think of a callus on your hand. If you rub your skin gently, nothing happens. If you take a knife to it, you get a wound. But if you apply moderate friction repeatedly, the skin becomes thicker, tougher, and more resilient. The body works the same way on a cellular level. Many superagers lived through times of scarcity, war, or physical hardship. They didn't have climate-controlled environments 24/7. They walked miles because they had to, not for cardio. They endured heat in the summer and cold in the winter. These environmental stressors triggered ancient survival circuits in their biology. When the body is exposed to heat, like a sauna, or cold, like an ice bath or winter walk, or even periods of hunger, it upregulates the production of heat shock proteins and other repair molecules. These proteins scour the cell, refolding damaged proteins and preventing the accumulation of junk that leads to neurodegenerative diseases. The modern, unhealthy lifestyle is often characterized by a lack of stress, constant snacking, never hungry, constant temperature control, never hot or cold, and sedentary behavior, never physically exerted. This comfort makes our biology fragile. The unhealthy centenarian might not go to the gym, but they might garden for hours in the sun, heat, stress, and movement, or live in a walk-up apartment. Exertion. Practical application involves reintroducing micro-stressors into our lives. This could mean finishing your shower with cold water, using a sauna, or practicing time-restricted eating to give your digestion a break. These habits mimic the hardship that strengthens the organism. Factor 5. Metabolic flexibility and insulin sensitivity. We cannot talk about longevity without talking about metabolism. The fifth factor is metabolic flexibility. This is the body's ability to switch efficiently between burning glucose, sugar for fuel, and burning fat for fuel. In the modern world, most people are metabolically inflexible. Because we eat high-carbohydrate foods frequently throughout the day, our bodies rely entirely on glucose. When the glucose runs out, we get hangry, tired, and brain-fogged because our bodies have forgotten how to access our fat stores. This constant high insulin state is a precursor to type 2 diabetes, obesity, and rapid aging. Many centenarians maintain high insulin sensitivity well into old age. Interestingly, some research suggests that the unhealthy foods of the past, like animal fats or butter, were less damaging to insulin sensitivity than the processed sugars and seed oils of the modern diet. A person living to 100 in the 20th century might have eaten bacon and eggs, but they weren't consuming high fructose corn syrup and sodas or processed snack cakes every 2 hours. Furthermore, many long-lived individuals naturally practice a form of calorie restriction or intuitive fasting. They might eat a heavy lunch but skip dinner or simply eat less overall. Calorie restriction is the single most robust intervention for extending life in animal models. It reduces the production of IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, a hormone that promotes growth but also promotes aging and cancer proliferation. To apply this, the goal is to keep insulin levels low and steady. We can do this by reducing processed carbohydrates, prioritizing protein and healthy fats, and perhaps most importantly, not eating all day long. Giving the body a 12 to 16-hour break from food, including sleep, allows insulin to drop and fat burning to begin. Factor 6. The power of purpose, ikigai. The sixth factor is perhaps the most abstract, yet it has concrete physiological data to back it up. In Okinawa, Japan, one of the world's famous blue zones, they have a word, ikigai. It translates roughly to the reason for which you wake up in the morning. Having a strong sense of purpose is consistently linked to lower mortality risk. A study published in JAMA Network Open involving nearly 7,000 adults over age 50 found that those with the highest life purpose scores were significantly less likely to die during the study period than those with the lowest scores. Why does purpose matter to biology? Because the body is energy conservative. From an evolutionary standpoint, once an organism has reproduced, it is biologically expensive to keep it alive. However, human beings have evolved the grandmother hypothesis, the idea that elders are valuable for the survival of the tribe because of their wisdom and childcare support. When a person feels needed, whether it is to care for a spouse, tend to a garden, volunteer, or finish a life's work, the brain sends signals to the endocrine system to maintain vitality. Conversely, when people retire and feel they have no purpose, we often see a rapid decline in health, a phenomenon sometimes called retirement death syndrome. The unhealthy centenarian often has a fierce dedication to something. It might be their business, their grandchildren, or even a hobby. They are engaged with life. The practical step here is to define your ikigai. It does not have to be grand or world-changing. It just needs to be a reason that compels you to get out of bed. If you are retiring, find a new mission immediately. Convince your biology that you are still necessary. Factor 7. Environment and the avoidance of toxins. The final factor brings us to the environment. While we focus on personal habits, we often ignore the invisible sea we swim in. Many people who lived to 100 in previous generations grew up in a world with significantly fewer synthetic chemicals. They were not exposed to microplastics, endocrine-disrupting chemicals in personal care products, or the massive amounts of pesticides used in modern agriculture during their developmental years. Their bad habits, like smoking tobacco, were singular insults to the body. Today we face a cocktail effect of thousands of low-grade chemical insults. The cumulative load of these environmental toxins can burden the liver and immune system, making it harder for the body to handle the normal wear and tear of aging. Furthermore, our modern indoor environments are often hermetically sealed, trapping off-gassing chemicals from furniture and paint. The centenarians of the past often lived in drafty houses with high air exchange or spent the majority of their time outdoors. While we cannot escape the modern world, we can reduce our toxic load to give our bodies a fighting chance. This means filtering our drinking water, choosing glass over plastic for food storage, and using air purifiers in our homes. It implies being mindful of the products we put on our skin. By lowering the background noise of environmental toxicity, we free up our body's resources to repair DNA and fight off disease. This is crucial for those of us who may not have the genetic armor of the superagers. To summarize, the longevity paradox, the mystery of the smoking, drinking centenarian, is not proof that health habits don't matter. Rather, it is evidence that aging is a complex interaction between our genetic hardware and our lifestyle software. The people who break the rules and survive usually have a genetic advantage that protects them. But for the rest of us, and even for them, the principles of longevity remain consistent. Here are the key takeaways to remember. Respect your genetics. Understand that if you don't have the super genes, you cannot afford to be careless. You must use lifestyle to mimic their effects. Build social immunity. Prioritize relationships and community as highly as you prioritize diet. Loneliness is a toxin. Cultivate resilience. Adopt the mindset of conscientious optimism. Manage stress through perception, not just avoidance. Embrace hormesis. Don't fear discomfort. Use heat, cold, and physical exertion to toughen your cellular defenses. Master metabolism. Focus on insulin sensitivity and give your digestive system a rest through time-restricted eating. Find your purpose. Discover your ikigai. A sense of purpose is a survival signal to your body. Clean your environment. Reduce the toxic load in your home and water to free up your body's repair energy. Thank you for joining me in this deep dive into the science of aging. The goal isn't just to add years to your life, but life to your years. By understanding these mechanisms, you are taking the controls of your own biology. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. If you found this presentation helpful, please consider subscribing for more evidence-based health education. Stay curious and stay healthy.